Hey, welcome to Scry-fi. We're talking about episode 7, Choice of the Acolyte. Acolyte. I will always mess that up.
There's no U. Acolyte.
I want to say Acolyte, as if it's like some kind of medicine or something.
Like Pediasure or something.
That's just my problem, though. So this whole episode is about looking back at what really happened. We knew this episode was coming from the start.
Yeah, right? Finally the flashback that we've been waiting for. And it was quite enlightening. It was kind of a, it was like showed how much of it was just kind of cultural misunderstanding.
Yeah, I mean,
misperceptions. He said they don't treat them like children. He didn't see all the little loving parts. He only saw when they were training, so it looked like they were just building these weapons or something.
Right. It's strange, and we'll get into it. We have a little foreknowledge of episode 8 because we're filming this late, because Texas was without power for a whole week. So
hurricane and stuff.
Yeah, so we're gonna try not to say anything about episode 8 until we get to that episode. But also keep in mind there's spoilers for episode 7 here. Go see that first before watching it.
This is generally a review show to watch after. And so we'll get into the commentary and details and everything. But let's get into the.
Well, I do want to say, so it starts on with Brendock 16 years later. So if they were if they were, 10 years old at this point?
Yeah, so they're like 26, I guess.
26, that feels about right and stuff. There's some people that I've seen in posts and stuff have said stuff like, how did, what's his name? Torben. How did Torben become a master in 16 years and all that stuff? And we can get into these details.
Or was he just...
They called him Master Torben.
Who was it that called him that?
The Jedi of the temple. He doesn't have a name in the series, but the Jedi running the temple.
Huh.
And they might have even said it like we're here to see Master Torben or something like that. But I have a idea of how that would happen. We can get to that in a minute. But I don't know if I don't know if like the 16 years and all that stuff. That means there's 6 years in between this to where he decided to go into that meditation thing, right?
Oh, yeah, because he was in that for 10 years.
Yeah, so it's interesting. He could have been a Padawan for another... He should have been a Padawan a lot more, obviously, because he messed up.
Well, another thing, too, is that like there are some scenes. There's at least one I think of in episode 2 where some civilian says, Master Jedi to Anakin, who was a Padawan at the time, So it's also something that they say, that people say to Jedi as a term of respect that doesn't necessarily mean they're officially ranked master. Just like when Obi-Wan calls his master. Now, that is his master. That's a different thing, but he calls him master, even though Qui-Gon was not a master.
Was he not?
Oh, no, he was a master. He just wasn't on the council. You're right.
Right, but he was also... It's very confusing because there's a rank of master. Yeah.
Oh, Ahsoka called Anakin master.
Right, and he was never actually...
Right, but even when Anakin was a Padawan, there was some civilian who calls him Master Jedi. I think it was that dude with the little Yabibble dude with the gray pointy beard on Naboo or whatever.
I have a theory on that. We could talk about that later, but we'll dive into the episode here. So, Brendock, 16 years later, it shows them. I like.
Okay, this is the first time we find out why they were even on the planet.
Right.
The thing about they think there was a vergence, and they mentioned the hyperspace disaster, which refers to a bunch of the Nihil stuff that's in the High Republic stories. I don't know a lot
from
about
the books. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting. They said that the planet was dead like a year ago or something, or a few years ago.
So all this life is cropped up on it, probably right about the time the twins were created, probably
Right.
something like that.
I guess 10 years ago.
And then it's also interesting they're talking about this vergence, and that's what Qui-Gon said. He had encountered a vergence in the Force, which he believed created Anakin. So when Shmi told him there was no father, he thought, wow, life has been created by the Force. That's a virgin. Only virgins can do that. And so they're thinking along the same lines.
Yeah, it must be so important that maybe this is where they build their temples. They go, oh, this is a special place, a holy place almost in their minds. We need to
Yeah.
build a temple here, kind of thing. We need to
Because
do
they
this.
sense
Yeah,
the virgins as well, maybe.
right.
Now, is the virgins a specific geographic location, like around that hole or around that tree or between the two? Maybe the hole and the tree represent dark and light, and they're, I don't know, polar
So
opposites.
the big yellow tree that they
Yeah.
go to.
Or, because when Mace was told about the virgins by Qui-Gon, he said centered around a person, So virgins could be different things, apparently, not just around a person. So.
Yeah, I imagine if the force is just this big field of energy, basically, every now and then, just like in any kind of random clusters, something might like gather up a huge, almost black hole it all up into one
Mm-hmm.
combined spot. And so I guess that's what they're saying happened on this planet with all the life and stuff.
Maybe all, like say on Earth when life first started, maybe that was a vergence, like every time life starts anywhere, there's like a vergence in the Force. Since life creates the Force, makes it grow, according to Yoda.
Yeah. We finally get to see the Wookiee doing his normal Jedi stuff. I think I think this little metal detector thing was a bit silly.
Well, I mean, he's detecting something.
Oh,
It's
sure.
probably not a normal metal detector like people
Oh, yeah.
use at the beach. It's probably like sending out, you know, uh, tachyons and detecting like miles
Sure.
down, and okay, it's
Sure.
probably
But
way
as
better.
a gadget, it felt a little.
Like it would have been better if he's holding that box thing with the two antennas, like the scanner.
Yeah.
You
Or
use
even
before.
like that thing in one arm and the box thing in another. But instead, he looks like he's using it like you do
Like he's
a.
looking for
Yeah.
bottle caps or something.
Yeah. Now, all the other stuff that they're doing seems like, they're taking samples basically of the
Yeah.
whole
Well, you
force.
want the props to look like stuff they had in the 70s.
That's true. That's true. And there is kind of a tradition in Star Wars to take normal things and kind of turn them upside down and turn them into something else and stuff. It's just this time they didn't seem to turn it upside down. It's, all right. So we find out that Torben here is the whole cause of everything, basically.
Unhinged, dude. But there was more than just him. It was him, but it was
It was.
also other
It
stuff.
was also Soul.
Yeah.
This was a cute moment where they're saying, it's unwise to insult a Wookiee's cooking.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I want a Wookiee cooking my food. All their hair'd fall into it. Like, I guess
Yeah,
he hasn't pulled
he
back.
needs a body net.
He has his hair up.
Well, they seem to like it. Whatever they cooked. Probably some little bird thing or something.
I don't think Torben liked it.
The soul seemed to like it.
It's interesting to see another whiny Padawan. So it's not just Anakin. But yeah, clearly upset about having to be there for weeks. He is more a city Jedi, I suppose, than an outdoorsy Jedi.
Yeah.
I bet
Well,
you the
he's
Wookiees.
probably, more interested in like if they go to stop a war, that kind of stuff. So
Sure.
gathering soil samples.
He wants to feel useful, prove himself, all that useful energy and stuff.
Mm.
But I also just genuinely think he doesn't like the outdoors. Like it just feels like whenever you take a kid out camping and they don't
If
like
you're from
camping,
Coruscant,
whining. Yeah. Whereas the Wookiee is just
It
perfectly
looked like it
fine.
was cold there too. Did you notice you could see their breath?
Yeah, I noticed that. It's been winter. So there's some cool little moments between them here as Jedi. Um, I I think that like Indara's, I don't know, she's obviously in charge of this whole group and stuff. I guess she's the only master. Is she a master at
Well,
this point?
she's the master of Tobin. Says
Right.
Tobin, and then the other ones are Jedi, just like her. Like I don't know
I
if
think
she's a
she's a
master.
master though.
She's a master. Okay, so
I could be wrong.
she said colleagues before, so I guess they're just not. They're knights. They're not Padawans.
Sure.
So, but she's in command of the mission, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, but anyway, so yeah, we find out pretty soon, as they start to spread out and look around at stuff.
Now, what's interesting here, though, is that already Soul, he seemed more emotionally invested in this than normal.
Where he finds the girls?
Yeah. Has this happened?
Well,
it hasn't happened yet. It's about to.
Yeah, he's about to. He's following these little creatures that are
Mm-hmm.
going around. This is where he sees the tree.
Right.
I wonder, seeing the tree itself, maybe you can't just stumble upon this on an entire planet. He must have been using the Force to kind of
he was sensing
feel
something.
for something. Yeah.
Yeah. See, if this tree is somehow sprouted up because of the Virgins, or it is the Virgins, or it's related to the Virgins, he probably would have felt something. And maybe he's just feeling the girl's presence. The tree is incidental.
It's cool to see this scene from a different angle.
Yeah.
And something like that. It made me think of like Back to the Future too.
Yeah. You're seeing things from inside. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's interesting in this scene too is that the girls both like tried to hold the creature in a kind of a hostile way, but then one of them complained that the other one was doing it too long or something like that. But
yeah, that scene actually showed me, gave me I think we saw this in episode 3, the first time. And it made me realize that Osha's got some darkness in her that she wants to keep hidden. Because the first thing you see is Osha, she holds it, but just for a brief moment, but then she kind of lets it go.
Right.
And then May holds it and she instantly gets all mad, like, don't do that, like as if she didn't just do it.
Yeah.
I was like, I mean, kids are like that, but
so
it made me go,
when
okay.
Soul sees them, though, he's like feels some kind of connection.
Well, he definitely sees he definitely sees them using the Force right there.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that shouldn't be too surprising. I mean, there are other Force users in the galaxy. I think it's something that he feels. It's weird. Maybe he feels their connection because, of everything that we know happens, so. Well,
there's some talk about the witches are able to hide themselves from the Jedi, their senses.
So he was surprised. He was taken off guard because normally they would have sensed something.
Yeah, they're outside of that protection.
Well, they're using some dark side, that's for sure.
Yeah. And so if they thought, and they said previously, there's no one living here, no life or anything, he sees 2 people. It's like, I shouldn't be seeing 2 children who are probably attached to something else that I haven't sensed. What's going on here?
Yeah. Obviously would want to investigate.
Yeah.
So then this grouchy lady shows up.
That's Mother Coral.
Mm-hmm. It's like, what are they? Her prisoners? What's going on here?
Yeah, Mother Coral. But no, I mean, it does look pretty aggressive. You see,
we've already talked about too how with the bows and the thread talk, how they seem like they're somehow related to the Dathomir witches. I mean, maybe they're from Dathomir, but they're a different culture than the Night Sisters. But there's some ancient overlap or something, and so he's picking up on that, and then he sees a Zabrak,
right? Yeah. I think that
he even mentions, I think, at one point somewhere, like, are they Night Sisters? I think they actually say the word at some point. somewhere. It might be in this episode. I'm not sure.
I think it's kind of cool. He doesn't have the know-how to hack into the controls, but later on,
Naka does.
Yeah, we'll see that. But you can just climb. Again, we get to see another scene from a different angle.
Uh-huh.
And
I've gone back into episode 3 to look to see if he was in the background. You can't see him back there.
Right. But they do react to his noise.
They do. That scene where they think they heard something and they go in to check it out, that actually happened in episode 3.
Yeah.
And of course, he only sees the part here where she pushes him down. Doesn't see
Right.
the hugging or any of that stuff. Then they see him over this big dark hole. Are they going to throw the girls in the hole? What's going on?
It seems like they are.
Yeah.
And we still don't know if they were.
He knows
we
it's
don't know
dark
what their
side
plans
magic. Yeah, I kind of doubt it, but he knows it's dark side magic. So definitely a Jedi would want to investigate more here. That's what's interesting about this whole situation is like you could see it from each step along the way down the road to damnation. It's like it seemed to make sense for that person at that time from their perspective.
Yeah. So of course they go to investigate, which, why not? You see,
but instead of going up to the door and knocking, they slice the controls.
I know. I mean, I don't know if there is a way to knock, and they're coming in at night instead of during the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like that's their first thing, right? Their first mistake.
And they
okay to
probably
scout it
thought
out.
they were going to hack the controls, get in, sneak around a little bit, find out some stuff, and then leave. But then they walk in there and they're all standing there. So then
yeah,
the diplomatic mode.
Yeah, I know. But I mean,
But if you think children are in danger and there's dark force powers at use, and they're the only children around, and who knows, did they kidnap these? People do kidnap force-using children to try to, who knows if like the Hutts want them to bet for them and stuff like that. So they probably have to protect children. And then they see this. I mean, you could see how they might go, well, if we tip our hand, they might go ahead and kill the kids right away or something. They don't know what they're dealing with. So.
Yeah, I don't know. It's also weird. Like they have this, at one point she said, you can't deny that we have the right to test the children. Why can't she deny that? It's their children.
Well, she says, with your permission.
I know. That's the weird thing. We have the right to test them with your permission.
I think.
Well, then that sounds like I can say no.
Request,
Yeah, it sounds like it's not a real request. It's going to happen.
You got to understand, too, what you're talking about here is not the same as if they just found some force-sensitive kid living with a regular family in some normal place. The fact that there's no other kids here, there's no men around. Did they kidnap these kids? Where'd they get these kids from, for one thing? And then also the fact that they sense dark side power being used, so they have to they're not going to let some order of dark side users grow.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that you would want to watch over and things like that. But I don't know. It was just to say that we have the right to test them, even though with your permission was just a politeness, I think. Uh-huh. She was saying, no, we have a right.
But we know the Jedi don't normally take kids without permission. That's true. Right. And he said that, and normally that is true. But if you come across
if they're in a dangerous situation or something.
Yeah, you think they might be in danger. That's no different than like Child Protective Services noticing something that looks fishy and wanting to see birth certificates and stuff like that.
But let's say you're just a normal farmer or whatever in the Republic, and your kid is like, ooh, I can float things around with my mind or whatever. You're like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. And a Jedi shows up and says, hey, I want to test your kid. You're telling me that you can't go, no, you can't test
him.
Yeah,
I think you can. I think normally you can. I can say, no, we're not interested. Get out of here. And they go, okay, and they leave. And eventually the kids' powers fade away as they get older because they don't receive training.
I don't think so. I don't.
But the way they're being trained.
But the way she said it, you can't deny that we have the right to test. That sounds like there's a law that says they can test.
I don't know, but I know they can't take them without permission.
Sure. I'm not saying they think they can take them without permission, but
maybe the reason they test them is because they want to keep tabs. So if 20 years later, some mysterious bank robberies are happening with teleportation powers, they go, let's look up this dude.
Right. I mean, it may be the case that it is a law and it's seen as, children needing vaccines and they got to,
in a way, these force powers are kind of like nuclear power. You can't just let some dude in a neighborhood somewhere build a nuclear reactor.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
The ability to destroy a planet.
I think I could take almost any group of players in the Star Wars role-playing game, and by only exposing him to the things he's seen so far, run the players right into a cluster mess like this.
Right, because
go right into it thinking they were doing the right thing the whole time.
Right, like if we had seen this episode instead of episode 3 that shows you all the loving moments and all that stuff, you'd be like, oh, what are you doing?
Yeah, you got to rethink the whole thing from their point of view, seeing only what he's seen so far.
Yeah. And in this whole moment of getting to see what happened to Torben while his eyes were black and
the I was going to say nice issue. The Coven, they made their own set of mistakes as well. Grabbing him like that and messing with him and all, that was a very hostile act.
I mean, they did enter their home, basically, but...
Sure, but then they, said, okay, sorry for the intrusion,
I think that she went into his head more than just to mess with him. I think she was getting information. The minute that this starts, she starts talking to him, calling him by his name, where he's from, who his parents are.
As soon as she got him to ask for something, that was the mental wall that came down that allowed her to take control. As soon as he said,
even more than that,
before you want to go back home, and he was like, yes, I want to go home. Boom, that's when his eyes turned black and she got him.
Well, before
even with the devil.
Yeah, before even asking that, like in this moment, she's calling his name, saying, so she's able to get surface information at least.
Yeah.
So obviously, someone enters your home. You look, there's the weakest mind. You find all the information you can about them. What are they doing here? How'd they get here? I'm sure you get all that information.
That's what's so cool about this. You can see it from either point of view.
Yeah.
Okay, so then they see this, and then to the Jedi's credit, they don't immediately just draw their lightsabers when his eyes turn black and he falls to his knees.
Soul does.
Soul pulls it out.
But Indara stops him. Yeah.
I don't know if he was going to do anything. I think he really was just going to show her the lightsaber. And it was just, he pulled it at a weird, inopportune moment. But, if they had reacted that way, it would have been understandable too.
Yeah, it's a tense moment.
Yeah. It's what it reminds me of is like a group of monks, European monks, coming to the shores of some other continent, and they're interacting with a native tribe, and they don't understand each other's culture, and they both think the other one is like evil, and so there's a big cultural misunderstanding as well as the only seeing certain parts of their interactions.
Yeah.
And then here he is certain that he has some sort of connection with Osha, so that the whole thing really sends him into a attachment tailspin,
Yeah, he has to save them, kind of thing.
Yeah, he feels like I've got to save these kids. They're being abused or going to be led down this evil path, and something's not right here. It
was cool that we got to see May's test this time because we didn't get to see it last time. It's pretty much what you thought it was. She just lied her way into failing it and been like, yeah, I don't want to be with you.
And they knew she was lying.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was cool. And then we get to see the OSHA thing again. But this time, seeing the scene again, you're looking at it from their point of view. And it seems much more, she's asking for help. Good, we can help and all that stuff.
Oh, and then you also get to hear the, we all have to be sacrificed to blah blah blah. Now it sounds like they're going to throw her down the hole.
Right.
Or when we heard what she really said, she said something like, "We must make sacrifices to be part of the whole, so that everyone is for everyone." That sounds all great, you know. So it's just that subtle change in wording through the retelling of a child.
Yeah. This is this is the moment where they get the information about the virgins and that the twins are the virgins and all this stuff. So here's the part where we already know that Torben desperately wants to go home. He's tired of this, right? And then whenever he goes, oh, okay, there's the answer that we've been looking for weeks. Yeah. It's the twins.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Is he still somehow... Maybe he's not actively being controlled by them. I don't think that. But is he somehow affected by that experience still? Like uneasy from it or disturbed by it, and it's made him more erratic or impulsive or something? I don't know. But whatever he does here is like way off. It's like he's just like, boom, jumps on the thing and leaves without any other stop. You know, that's just crazy. But then she sends Soul after him. Soul was supposed to go get him and talk him down and bring him back. And when they get to the door, he goes in with them. Like they're accomplices.
It was the wrong person to send after.
Attachment issues and just multiplies right along with Torben's situation.
That was the wrong person to send after.
Mm-hmm. So now it's even worse.
Yeah.
This is what's really cool too, is that they made her sympathetic and wanted to give the girl what she wanted, and she argues with her own people about, that's what she wants, and
telling her she has to choose between being a mother and their leader, and she picks mother.
They really make her a likable character.
Yeah. Which, it basically means that the Jedi were the bad guys in this whole story.
Well,
but they're bad guys in which you can understand their reasoning.
Yeah,
they had
real misunderstandings based on tons of other experiences where they were in the right doing what they did, and you can also see how so let's talk about the what are they called? The Coven's Order.
It's witches.
Yeah, the witches. So anyway, this group of witches. There's probably groups all over the galaxy who have religious groups and have varying degrees of some access to the Force, and they practice it in their own ways. And we've
seen some of that in the Clone Wars.
Cultural wrappings. I think even the religious leader, shaman Ewok guy was supposed to have some Force power of some sort, stuff like that. And that's probably happening all over the galaxy. But the thing is, my impression of the Jedi is that thousands of years ago, some of the most advanced religious orders that had access to the Force came together from all over the galaxy, and they figured out, this is it. This is how it works, and if you do these things, you will fall to the dark side. There's a dark side. There's a light side. Here's how it does, and balance and all that stuff. And they figured it out, and they made the Jedi Order. And so there's a lot of groups out there that have their cultural norms and everything, and it mixes together some dark Force stuff and some light Force. Some of them use passions to some degree, but they also believe in, and they have various mixtures. Those groups are probably more susceptible to bad actors falling to the dark side than the Jedi are. We see it a lot more in the Jedi because they focus in on those moments throughout the thousands of years of Jedi history because it's more exciting. But generally speaking, the Jedi are pretty stable for thousands of years and thousands of Jedi. But if you were to take one of those groups and grow them up to a galactic scale, the rate at which you would have dark side users emerging and doing terrible stuff would be way, way higher, I think.
Oh, sure. Because they lack the discipline and understanding of,
these folks aren't they're looking at the thread thing and all that. They're not looking at it from the point of view of dark side, light side, so they're more susceptible to that. They're using it, and so here they are, two of the girls that went through these tough times, and they're skirting with overwhelming dark side stuff,
Yeah.
But so I think that the Jedi are trying to get a grip on all that and making sure that those kind of things don't grow and start, becoming another Sith empire, even if they're not Sith per se.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. It all makes sense as to why they would do what they were doing,
Yeah.
what they saw from their point of view.
Here's where these four went wrong, though, is because what they didn't follow with the Jedi Order. Remember when she contacted the Jedi Order and the Jedi Order was like told them, "You're already too much involved in this. You need to back out."
Mhm.
The Jedi follow this thing like Taoism, where you're trying to disturb as little as possible the web of interactions. You're trying to be as careful and not just go in with your whatever and act recklessly and all that kind of stuff. They didn't follow any of that. They just made their judgments and they acted impulsively and went in for it. And they didn't
Well,
consider those things are meant to protect against things like cultural misunderstandings and misperceptions, and they should have been way more passive about
this
it.
is all due to attachment, right?
Yeah.
Torben makes a mistake, as in, okay, I'm just gonna fix this and get this over with, so we can bring these kids back and everything will be fine, right? But Endara is attached to her Padawan, and so she sends Soul after him. Soul is attached to these kids. It's
Mhm.
just too much,
It's almost like the Virgins kind of like just threw all of them off, and they got obsessive about it and lost their
maybe.
center for a while. I don't mean a direct mind
Sure,
influence or
sure.
anything. I just mean the situation they weren't prepared for and forgot some of the important things about being Jedi.
I like that she says, "If I get close enough, can you make the jump?" I would have liked to have seen that jump. Wookiee
Oh, I know.
jumping
I thought I
from the.
was going to see that.
I know Wookiee jumping from the ship.
That would have been cool. And he could have gone, ooh, down there.
I don't know if we'd want that. Now, what's her name? Mother Coral. She is definitely a little too violent, dark sided.
Yeah, she's ready to go. And then she's like, no violence. Inara, am I saying that right? Indara, Mother
Oh, the mother. That's Mother Anicia.
Anicia,
Anicia. Anicia.
Inicia, yeah. And she's all like, no violence and all this stuff. She actually was being more Jedi-like in some of these moments than the Jedi were.
Yeah. I mean, it shows that you can be well, and that's the thing. If you have attachments and passion, you can be a good person as long as the right moment, as long as the wrong moment doesn't present itself. And that's the problem with it, right?
Yeah,
Like the mother here is definitely like a good person, I think, but with her power, the minute you don't have these disciplines the Jedi have and stuff like that, you could suddenly shift to the dark side.
yeah. You're playing
Um,
with fire, basically. You got
yeah.
to, yeah. Oh,
Speaking of which,
speaking of which, oh, here's an important thing too. We find out they made it look before like she set this fire, set the door on fire to, I'm not gonna.
right?
But now we find out she was just trying to burn the book, and it got out of control, and and then it got into the circuitry. And one thing I was wrong about is I thought that there must be something else causing more fire elsewhere because it seemed weird for that fire at that door to spread all the way up through. But I guess it went into that circuitry and then got to the reactor. And once the reactor blew up, then all the fire that came from that was
Well,
the rest of
it
it.
just showed it whenever it hit the controls right there.
Yeah.
It was like spewing out some kind of oil or something, and that's
Yeah.
why the floor is catching.
It's like an oil
See that?
based
Yeah.
power system or something.
See
When
how
you
it's
get there.
oiled right here on the ground?
So this old mine was particularly vulnerable to this kind of stuff, and obviously
Yeah.
there was an open panel right below those controls where you see a bunch of wires and stuff. Those caught fire, so probably it just led right up into the reactor.
Yeah. Obviously, whatever mechanisms they use in here, it's some kind of oil or
Probably
combustible.
old
Yeah.
unsafe stuff that Because they didn't have OSHA.
The grown OSHA. The way he walks in here is weird to me. Look at the steps that Soul takes. I don't know why he's doing this. Like they're walking normal, and then he's taking these big steps here, and then he continues to step.
Well, yeah, it's kind of weird, but it reminds me of another thing that happens later in the series with stepping and sensing. Later in the next.
It's interesting. So, okay, the minute the twins show up,
yeah.
Actually, this is May, but he calls her OSHA, which I think is interesting.
Oh, he misidentified her, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I don't know if that's particularly meaningful.
Okay, now here, this is another mistake on the side of the Coven, or at least of her. Standing during a tense situation, you're standing right next to a Jedi, and you go into this big black smoke thing. I don't know what she was trying to do, but it looks very scary and very offensive. And then he looks over and he sees that she's starting to turn like that too. So he's probably thinking she's eating her or killing her or doing something.
Yeah, I think she was teleporting them both out of there in some kind of smoke mist thing.
Just to get them out of a dangerous situation. Right?
Yeah.
To remove the daughter from the dangerous situation.
Yeah, she sees
they don't know what the hell's going on. It looks like, oh, they're going to hurt the kids. And then the kid starts evaporating. And so he pulls out his saber. I don't see too much fault in that. I think this is mostly her. It's like if you were standing in front of somebody who has a gun and you reach in your pocket like you're going to pull something out and you pull out a flashlight and point it at him, when the guy shoots you. It's just kind of irresponsible.
But it's also understandable that you have this instinct of protect the kids' violence. You do a thing.
Yeah.
And it's,
She was scared too.
This might have been a natural.
Said, okay, but let me get him out of here. And
see how she starts to turn into mist as well?
Uh-huh.
I think that was her grabbing her and misting away, basically.
Teleport her away.
Yeah.
It's easy to see what both of them were thinking, but why he would think the opposite.
Well, even if he thinks that she's trying to get away with her, I don't know.
I don't think he thinks that. I think he doesn't know what this is, and he thinks he's hurting her or doing something offensive. It looks very threatening,
Yeah, and her eyes are all black again.
Yeah. I mean, you'd think something bad was about to happen. You better do something.
Yeah, it just seems so reactionary on Soul's part for a Jedi.
But what else?
Or anybody else. But here's
without just be disintegrated.
Sure, but yeah, I mean,
and you
would expect him to have some better training
for
this.
She wouldn't just be doing something innocent because she would know how this looks to me and know that I don't know about their powers. I think the biggest surprise would be to go, oh, you were going to let her go? Didn't you realize that doing that would look like some offensive act? I think that's on them. I don't think that's a Jedi. I don't think that was mostly the Jedi's fault at that point. Just that one little action. The whole situation though, was the Jedi's fault of being in a situation where misunderstandings like that were bound to happen. That was the Jedi's fault.
Sure, but I mean, I think he understands that he made the mistake there because he's letting himself get beat up here.
Yeah, and I think that the reason why Torben. Was it?
Torben.
The reason why Torben was so harsh on himself years later, and why Soul also was harsh on himself, but still justifying it. But the reason they all felt guilty about it was because even if you could point to specific things and said, well, the Coven shouldn't have done this, and they shouldn't have done that, and they should have said this, you could point out all their little mistakes, but the larger situation.
The Jedi should have never been there.
Right. They should
Right.
have obeyed the council and moved back and been much more, thoughtful about things than the impulsive that they were. Because that created an opportunity where the inevitable mistakes that anybody could make will lead to this kind of disaster.
Right.
You almost couldn't blame them for making those mistakes because they have a certain level of ignorance, just like anybody, and a certain level of, defensiveness and fear. And, the Jedi are supposed to de escalate and not use fear as a
Right.
weapon.
Supposed to be peacekeepers.
Yeah. They did the opposite here.
Now here's the part that we all wanted to see. Although we didn't expect it to be against other Jedi. I mean, I wanted to see a Wookiee fighting.
Wookiee stuff,
A
right?
Wookiee Jedi fighting. I didn't know I wanted to see it against two Jedi, but that was
yeah, I didn't know this was going to happen, but that was pretty, because he had just said, he said something to Torben, and Torben said, like, I fortified my mind, so he wasn't going to let this happen again. Well, Chalnaka obviously.
Kalnaka.
Oh, she, by the way, that lady right there in the middle, is a Klatooinian, which are the dog-like people that Mandalorian cut the head off of.
Yeah.
Butchers. And they were also in Return of the Jedi. Barada, I think.
Yeah, there's a Twi'lek back there as well. I don't know who's over her right shoulder. I don't know what that race is. I think it's a new one, for as far as I can tell.
You mean her left shoulder, our right?
Right. Her left shoulder.
The blue lady?
Yeah.
That could be a Pantoran, but it looks blue-green.
She has, it looks green, like she has stripes going down this way. I don't think
Maybe
Pantorans have stripes, yeah. But, yeah, it's pretty cool. So they've taken over the Wookiee's mind. This whole scene is the best part of the whole episode, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I mean,
you mean the combat or the
combat?
Okay.
The combat, yeah. I mean,
it's fun
because it's like I said. The minute someone says Wookiee Jedi, you're like, so I better see that Wookiee Jedi.
Him being controlled with the Wookiee rage going on. And
yeah. And I thought I got robbed of it whenever they killed the Wookiee just sitting in a chair, and I was like, oh no, But yeah, I like that his attacks are these huge, sweeping.
They're so powerful. They just back.
And you can see, like, he hits them and they, like, fly back with it. Yeah. He's so fast, too. That would be so scary.
I love that.
Look at that. Yes.
Leap into the air.
Keeps knocking Torben to the ground, grabbing people, throwing them. And then a push.
Oh, yeah, that was good. At least he didn't rip anybody's arms off.
I guess he almost did. Yeah.
That was a great scene.
This part, he's using his claws against him too, which Wookiees don't do. Right?
Oh, yeah.
That's where he gets this. I don't see his claws out, actually. I guess it was being.
He could probably crush his head if he kept pushing.
Yeah. I guess being smashed up against the wall is what messed up his eyes. That was a good block on his side.
He's not going to hold it for long if it was interrupted.
Thankfully, Soul comes along. Yeah, looks pretty bad. But so I've watched this a couple times actually.
Yeah, great scene.
And Dara,
really cool too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then this is really interesting because I think that the witches' unique way of using their powers. Remember, power of one, the power of two, the power of many. They network together, kind of like a Tholian web.
Right.
They do that, but I think the flip side of that is
they become
vulnerability, so that if one person is hurt, they all take it.
Well, there's also another question here: is this their form of I use the Force so much that's all I got?
I think that too. I think it's like what happened with Luke. It's like you use every bit of your force power, you can pull something off, but it just drains you and you die after that. And I think they did that here, but I think that final bit where she gives them that resistance thing and they can't keep up. Yeah.
Yeah, it might not even been her fighting back as much as putting up so much of a wall that they pushed too hard that they collapse, right?
Oh, and then they collapse, and then now she
Yeah.
can go.
We also don't know that they died right there. They might have just passed out, and then the resulting explosion.
I think they died because of the look on her face. She kind of like looks a little surprised, and then there's this resignation look, like she's very, like sorry about what happened. Right after that.
Well, she also says, "Get the twins" right there.
Yeah.
Which would let her know there's nobody left.
The twins, there's nobody to take care of them. We have to take them. I think she knew immediately they had died, and she was surprised by it too. She didn't know they would take it that far. So it was an accident for sure. But again, it was an accident that could have been avoided had the Jedi been wiser about the entire
I think it was either she accidentally killed them by blocking it off too hard, or she did push back and killed them. But it was either I have no choice at this point. I have to kill them.
No, I think it was like
them off.
it could have been because of her pushing, but I think it was like she didn't. If it was because of her pushing instead of just resisting and them pushing too hard and killing themselves, if it was because of her pushing, I think it was like she knew how much she had to push to get them out, but she didn't know that was enough to actually kill them all.
Yeah.
And I think it was a special reaction because of the way they tie each other together. And, they're all Force users there, including May and Osha. And when they saw them, they knew immediately they were dead,
That's fair. Oh, he saw all that. So this scene was pretty cool. I had no idea before that he was holding both.
I looked back on episode 3, and all you see is they fall, and then he shows up and catches her.
Right.
Because they weren't seeing him standing over there. You saw it from their point of view. So. Yeah.
So we didn't know that he was holding them up. We also didn't know that he makes a choice, which is, I think, there's a lot of choices here that we're talking about.
I can't hold them both, so I better save Osha.
Yeah. Had they not been calling each other's names, he probably wouldn't even known which one to save. He looks at May for a while and decides to save Osha.
Interesting. Yeah. And then, I thought that she had been saved by somebody or whatever, but apparently she was sucked into an air vent the way Luke did.
Like Luke Skywalker on Empire Strikes Back. That's funny. And that we find out in the next episode. But yeah, so he thinks she died right there. He made that choice.
Mm-hmm.
He must have used the Force to pull her towards the rock because she wasn't anywhere near the rock.
I can believe that.
Yeah. But yeah, this is the part where they make their final bad choice.
Oh, yeah.
And I think,
and this was really on Inara.
And Dara was the one that made this choice. I think she's trying to save Torben.
Well, it speaks good to Soul that he wanted to go throw himself before the council and all that. But then she said, look, we did all this stuff. It messed everything up. And now this girl has nobody. Your penance should be to give her a life and be her master and raise her up and give her the life she wanted. So you could see the logic in that, but it's not kosher.
That's not it.
It's not what a Jedi should do.
That's not why she does it, though. This is why she does it.
You think the hidden...
She's looking at her Padawan. She knows he's going to be kicked out of the Order for this.
Oh, sure.
There's no way he stays in the Order.
He initiated the whole thing.
Yeah. He went against the High Council. So you can't stay in the Order like this.
And of course, he couldn't take it, and he eventually committed suicide.
Right.
So, yeah, that was a bad judgment on her part. And that's interesting because I hadn't thought about that until you mentioned it. But it could be that was an additional subconscious motivation,
Well, I mean, look at...
People rationalize things to themselves. It's possible Inara didn't even realize that was a reason why she was doing this.
I don't know. I mean, look at this. When he says, "Okay, I'll tell the council everything," look at her reaction. Anger. No, you're not. You're going to ruin.
So is she really angry like that way because of her great concern for this little girl, or because of Torben? Is that what
I think it's Torben.
Yeah.
Like I think her argument for the little girl is real.
Huh?
I think her argument for the little girl is real. I think she believes that and stuff, but I think she's just not bringing up her real motivation.
Yeah,
and that's why Torben's off to
they
her side.
Rationalize something, whereas there's really another motivation besides the rationalization, and it could be now maybe she's aware of it and she doesn't admit it, or maybe she's not aware of it and it's a subconscious motivation. I don't know. I kind of think it would be subconscious, but who knows? But yeah, and so it's so cool. This is so well written. Actually, the plot of this whole thing, the way it's come together, and the way you see here all of the little reasons why each person made the choice they made at each step along the way from their point of view. And it just was just a big, huge, terrible confluence of misunderstanding and ignorance and attachment.
Yeah. Clearly, the Jedi were flawed in a lot of their stuff. Mm-hmm. And we got to see what happened whenever that is the case. And, there were mistakes made by the witches as well. But, I mean, those were mistakes that you couldn't really blame them for. They were protecting their children or protecting their home.
And they're the kind of mistakes that when you put the Jedi in a policing situation like this, it's under the assumption that other people, less wise, less not honorable, or less, whatever, are going to have their mistakes and their things that they do. You need to be ready for that and account for that. So the Jedi were more responsible for sure.
Right. Oh, that's what I was saying. It was Soul's fault for killing the mother, was because he should have been trained in a way to know she's about to react in a defensive way to protect her kid, all that stuff. It's just a weird.
It was a test of his ability that he failed, his ability to recognize that and know that, but it's a test he shouldn't have had to make.
Yeah.
It's like when you see those baseball players in the outfield and they're doing these amazing dives to catch the ball, Well, if they were really good, they would have been where the ball was. They wouldn't have had to do that. So in a way, the fact that they had to do this amazing thing is an example of like, you shouldn't have had to do that.
Yeah.
But, one thing, though, is I don't think that this necessarily speaks bad of the Jedi Order or the Jedi ways. These guys didn't really follow the Jedi ways in a lot of instances, not just the cover-up, but also the attachments and the, not spontaneity, what's the word? Impulsiveness, all that stuff, not obeying the council, So this is a particular little group of Jedi who were thrown off balance by this whole weird situation of the Vergence and their particular little feelings they got. And that kind of thing is bound to happen once in a while, even with the best of setups,
Sure.
And it's something that I like to tell people too, is like, you got thousands of years, tens of thousands of years of the Jedi, in thousands of Jedi all over the galaxy, generation after generation. These things don't happen that often. But all of the shows and all of the movies are about those times. So it kind of gives you a distorted sense of, what it is, really.
Well, I don't think anybody thinks that the Jedi are always making these mistakes and stuff. I think that's the point of it, is that's why this is a story, right?
Yeah. But I think some people try to say, oh, if the Jedi weren't so stodgy about, having control of their emotions, this wouldn't have happened, So I don't think it's that.
I think that's just a misunderstanding of the Jedi philosophy.
Yeah, I think so. I think this definitely is the beginning, though, of a tipping of the scales and the imbalance in the Force and kind of the end of the High Republic. You know.
Well, we see more of that in the next episode. So, if you're watching this and the other episode's out, just go ahead and jump into that one, and we'll
Very
talk
soon
more about
we'll
that.
be releasing the next episode review, and so
Yeah.
yeah.
Thanks for watching. Let us know what you think. What was your favorite part? Was it the Wookiee Jedi fight? It had to be the Wookiee Jedi fight. And there's other. Awesome,
there's lots of cool parts in there.
There's a lot of cool parts, but like I said, the minute I saw the Wookiee, I wanted a Wookiee fight. So, but yeah, tell us what you think, and we'll see you next episode.